Welcome back to the Dreams and Action Collide podcast. I'm Joy Lanae, your productivity powerhouse. And today I'm going to do a really quick and fun episode sharing my favorite books that I've read this year, as well as podcast shows that I highly recommend you listen to. So these are just some, I've read quite a few books, but there's just some that have really stood out. And just tagging on to the episode that I did, episode 10, finding more time to read. I just thought that would be really good to show you what I've been reading and what I recommend. Also, podcast episodes are great for when you're driving in the car, doing housework, those types of things. So this is just what I wanted to recommend to you guys. So if you are listening on the podcast, then I highly suggest maybe even going over to the YouTube video so you can watch that. I'm going to show you some of those and highlight that. So the first book that I read at the beginning of this year was Today Matters by Jon Maxwell. I love Jon Maxwell. His books are great, but this one was really good, super practical, the way he did it, outlining, so what it is, it's the 12 daily practices to guarantee tomorrow's success. And so he outlines these sort of 12 daily practices, but he gives stories to it so that you just remember the concepts so much better. So I just wanted to read kind of like the chapter names to it so that you understand what it is, because it was really good. So for instance, today's attitude gives me possibilities. So it's talking about your attitude. Today's priorities give me focus. Today's health gives me strength. Today's family gives me stability. Today's thinking gives me an advantage. Today's commitment gives me tenacity. Today's finances give me options. Today's faith gives me peace. Today's relationships give me fulfillment. Today's generosity gives me significance. Today's values give me direction. And today's growth gives me potential. So it is very jammed packed with such great things. So highly recommend that. I'll probably read it again this year. All right, the next book is Think This, Not That by Dr. Josh Axe. So 12 mind shifts to break through limiting beliefs and become who you were born to be. So I love Dr. Josh Axe. He does some really good health things, which I'll mention in one of his podcasts that he does that. But he wrote this book this year and I read it, could not put it down. It was very good. So I highly recommend. This would also be a really good one to listen to on Audible. All right, the next book is called SpaceMaker, and this is How to Unplug, Unwind, and Think Clearly in the Digital Age. And this is by Daniel Sih, S-I-H. He's from Australia. This one is a really good book. He also wrote the book Raising Tech Healthy Humans, which I don't have because I borrowed it from the library when I read it this year, and it was really good. It's just the first part of the book kind of outlines the more science behind tech and what your brain and your body and everything that's going on. And then the second half is like really practical steps on what you can do to just really kind of wind down the tech and not allow it to take over your life, because this is just something I'm really getting into. And I'll mention some podcasts that I recommend as well, because I think, growing up in the 80s and 90s, we had the floppy disk, didn't have much going on. And then, tech has just come in and we're just seeing the onslaught of, mental health and those things. So that's just something I'm currently passionate about, because I do have young kids and just trying how to manage the tech side as well as managing my tech side, because I can get very hooked on my phone. All right, so the last book I want to recommend is called The Alone Advantage by Terri Savelle, and this is 10 behind-the-scenes habits that drive crazy success. Now, Terri Savelle is the daughter of Jerry Savelle, who I grew up listening with Kenneth Copeland and Jesse Duplantis at the Believers Convention. So if you know, shout out to anyone who knows what I'm talking about. But these are her dad and Kenneth Copeland, I just absolutely loved. And when I found her actually on her YouTube channel. And at first I was like, what's this? Because she kind of uses props and she really talks about dreams. She's her kind of nickname is Cheerleader of Dreams. Anyways, I loved listening to her and watching with her. So she came out with this book this year and I actually really love it. It's so practical. So I highly recommend getting that book. All right, now on to some podcasts. Now, I did mention the book Think This, Not That by Dr. Josh Axe. So he has a show called the Dr. Josh Axe Show. And his whole thing is talking about like the wholeness of a person. So body, mind, and spirit. And, so personal development, health. He does solo episodes. He also has great guests on. So I highly recommend that show. You can also watch, he does YouTube videos and YouTube shorts that are really good. So that's probably one of my number one that I always make sure that I listen to that week. The second podcast show that I recommend is All It Takes Is a Goal by Jon Acuff. This is a great podcast when it comes to goals. He's also written some books, which I haven't read yet, so I'm looking forward to that. But he is so relatable. He breaks things down really well. He has some great hosts. He's a great interviewer. So when it comes to goals, like I know I talk about goals, but this guy talks about goals and it is really good. I actually did one of his like webinars at the beginning of the year. It was like 3 days. He broke it up. So good. I got so much out of that, and even how I approach goals this year than I've ever done, and it's really good. So highly recommend that. It's All It Takes to Goal with Jon Acuff. The third podcast show that I recommend, and this one is all about health, and it's produced by Dr. Josh Axe as well as some other hosts that he has, and it's called the Ancient Health Podcast. And they have guests, they do solo episodes, but this is everything health related. But I highly recommend it if you feel like you have something that's chronic, or even women, like if you're dealing with infertility, PCOS, perimenopause, menopause, those types of things. It's not just for women in that aspect, but they do cover some of that. So I've learned so much. And sometimes when people kind of talk about their symptoms, I'm like, oh, I think you might have this. And anyways, it sparked me to even go see a naturopath, and just helped me with some of my issues. So Ancient Health Podcast, highly recommend. The other podcast show, which I recommend, and it's kind of new, it's called The Double Win with Michael Hyatt and his daughter, Megan Hyatt Miller. And it used to be called, I think, Full Focus, but they've changed the concept up. And they're talking to guests, and they're talking about winning at work and succeeding at life. So being able to do both, not that you succeed in your life, but your family is, messed up, or that you're just family, but you can't be career or goal oriented. So they really know how to meld the two, and they talk to guests about it, and it's super practical. So highly recommend that. Even their before episodes, the Full Focus episodes, those are really good too. All right, shifting gears, and this is my number one podcast when it comes to family and kids, and that is the 1,000 Hours Outside podcast. So this is Jenny Urich. She interviews people who have mostly written books, but they have so many topics on family, kids, getting outside, less tech, parenting, you name it, especially when it comes to kids and family. She is a great interviewer. Gets so much out of these people that have written books and done things, especially on the topic of less tech, which I told you I'm just really kind of getting into. Highly recommend this podcast, and that you listen to it. Binge watch the episodes because they're very easy to do that. So kind of in the same line of just less tech and less social media and stuff, I recommend the podcast Screen Strong Families. And this, again, is about less tech, screen for kids, not only in the developmental stages, but also navigating the teen years with tech and social media. So the lady that started it, her son was completely addicted to video games, high school, and I think even into college. And just how they navigated that. And she just started this movement. And I just think it is so good. Again, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. We did not deal with what we're dealing with today when it comes to social media, the mental health epidemic. And so just really navigating this, and being that I have young kids, I just want to be able to navigate this well. So that is a very good podcast show to listen to. All right, I'm going to quickly run through some business podcasts that I highly recommend. One is the Gold Digger podcast with Jenna Kutcher. The next one is the Jasmine Star Show. The other one is Online Marketing Made Easy with Amy Porterfield. Business Made Simple with Donna Miller. And then also the John Gordon podcast is really good. And that's he interviews inspirational people. So that's a really good personal development, leadership, especially if you're a coach and things like that. So I just wanted to do that super quick episode to highlight some books that I've read this year that I highly recommend, as well as podcast shows that I listen to on the regular while I'm cleaning my house or doing other things. So I hope you can have a listen. I will try to even maybe put a list of this together so that if you were driving or you couldn't write it down, you couldn't remember, I'll put a list in the show notes so you can grab that as well, so you can see what I'm listening to and what I'm reading and what I recommend. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to subscribe so you know when new episodes go live, and I will see you next time.